Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and welcome to the Insider Exclusive. Today, we have some breaking headline civil rights news featuring the Southgate Police Department. And with us will be Brad Gage of the law firm of Goldberg Gage. Stay tuned.
I had an entire police administration and the president and vice president of the POAs conspire against me.
I understand that there was a derogatory poster placed in the police department, and it was on the wall for 4 years.
There were several derogatory posters placed, one of which stayed for 4 years.
They made these officers targets, and so officer safety was jeopardized, and so was the community's public safety was jeopardized.
More than 25% of the officers have or will be making claims of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. It's a major problem. It's something that the city management, the city council needs to do something about, and they're not. And it's just getting worse. It's continuing. The officers, they win their case, they're not allowed to go back to work. It's a horrible situation.
I was basically forced to resign from Southgate. I was targeted right from early on in my career.
I had actually a very good career up to the last 2 years. The last 2 years just went down.
I'm very pleased today to have with me my next guest on the show, Brad Gage.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Good. You get involved with a lot of controversial issues here in like Los Angeles. You're filing suits against police departments. You were involved with the North Hollywood shootout. What kind of law does your law firm practice?
We often protect those that protect us. We represent police officers either when they've been sued in civil rights cases or when they've been wronged by their departments.
Yeah, and I want to make, this is a very special point because police officers have civil rights too.
Of course.
And there are many cases, many shows that we've done where you have an outsider, you know, a civilian who's, let's say, harassed by a police officer, beaten, whatever it may be, and that lawyer is on the show with that client talking about it. But in your particular case, you've represented police officers from the city of Bell Gardens, right?
Amongst others, yes.
And you also have a major case going on right now, of which you've been successful in winning 2 of the lawsuits against the Southgate Police Department. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we represent quite a few officers in the Southgate Police Department who have been harassed, discriminated against, and retaliated against, often because of their race or their national origin.
By their own police force?
By the top management in the police department.
Okay, and in this particular case, tell us a little background history of where you're at with this and how this all came about.
Well, we had a trial about 1.5 years ago where we represented the former assistant chief of police for harassment and retaliation and had a $4.2 million verdict. We had a second trial a few months ago with a $10.4 million verdict for 4 officers, and we have several others coming down the line.
Let me ask you this question. That means the city of Southgate has to come up with the money. They're obviously appealing it, aren't they?
They are, and they have insurance also.
They have to come up with the money and pay. Have the officers that were causing this discrimination, are those officers still on the police force?
They are, and my clients, after the trial, have been put on administrative leave, so they can't even work.
Did they get paid?
They don't get the overtime, but they do get other pay, but they don't get to promote.
Yeah, and also, for them to go get another job, is it difficult?
It's a red flag in a background investigation to be on administrative leave, yes.
So your clients are just waiting around for the appeal process, right?
And trying to get back to work. They're good cops. They should work. They can protect the city.
You know, when I first read the background information, I found it kind of difficult to even believe that the police officers within their own force were spending all this time and energy trying to oust people who have done nothing wrong. Why is that?
Well, I think it's both politically motivated and racially motivated.
Yes.
And, you know, instead of taking care of business, protecting the citizens of Southgate, They're going after cops they don't like.
Now, some of the policemen that they went after, and this happened to be the chief of police, was it?
Chief of police, the old chief, was one of the victims of harassment too, yes.
They're Hispanic, right?
Hispanic some, others are African American, and there's some Caucasians that were associated with the others, and also Asian officers.
Right. I understand that there was a derogatory poster placed in the police department, and it was on the wall for 4 years.
There were several derogatory posters placed, one of which stayed for 4 years and others for shorter periods.
When a police officer files a complaint that he's being discriminated against, as a police chief, who does he file it with?
He doesn't have a lot of options when he's that high up.
Yeah.
He can go to the city council, but in this case, city council members were alleged to have also been saying some inappropriate comments.
From my understanding, there was a group of police officers who got some of the city council people ousted from their job. Is that right?
Yes, there was a political war. It's been described as a war between two factions back in 2002,
Right.
2003. And if you were on the wrong side of that faction, the Hispanic side, you had problems.
That is truly amazing, because you have people who are decorated, you know, outstanding police officers who can't work and can't get a job some other place, right?
Right.
How do they come up with that money, the amount of money, $10 million?
Well, the jury listened to all of the evidence.
Yeah.
And then they had careful deliberation for about 3 days, and they decided what was fair compensation for the horrible problems that my clients have suffered.
What were exactly some of those problems they suffered?
Well, they were denied backup. They were given threats that they could be killed or injured.
These were written threats, weren't
There was
they?
a written threat in a document called the Resistor.
Right.
They were subjected to derogatory posters. They were ridiculed. They were ostracized. They were ignored. They were subjected to racial slurs.
And all because of their race or their background, right?
Or their association, yes.
And anybody who is sympathetic to their cause, too.
Right.
Because I understand that one of the persons on there is Caucasian, is that right?
One of the people is partially Caucasian, and once he helped a Hispanic officer, rather than being part of the favored group,
Yeah.
he wound up being targeted as well.
Where are these cases being tried?
Downtown Los Angeles.
It's been in the news when you win $10 million and another $4 million against the same city. You have some cases pending. Wouldn't it be in the best interest of the city to say, hey, we're on a losing streak here, why don't we settle these things?
One would think that would make sense. The next case is set for trial January 14th.
Right.
We've offered $25,000 on a case where every case I've had against them has been at least $1.5 million. So
$25,000.
they obviously have.
Who's in charge of that city?
Well, the people that are in charge of the city
Yeah.
include individuals that were part of that recall that targeted certain officers that I represent.
Do you find this behavior kind of exceptional in the sense that most police forces don't have this ongoing kind of thing happening, do they?
I find the conduct at Southgate shocking and outrageous.
Yeah. What is the citizens of Southgate done about this?
I don't think they've done much. I think that the department has actually put out some misinformation to the citizens, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Trying to tell them that it would be taxpayer money paying this, even though there is insurance to cover it.
Right. I saw a letter, I think it was from the city attorney of Southgate, that was sent out to the citizens of Southgate, asking them to report any misconduct by any police officers. Is the city attorney's office, somewhat assisting you?
The old city attorney's office came to the conclusion that there were at least 50 credible complaints of citizens that were racially targeted, profiled, and subjected to harassment by Southgate officers.
Right.
He and everybody else that was investigating that was fired by the department.
Fired. Like
Fired.
you come into work and you no longer have a job.
Right.
And what were they fired for? Are you representing them?
Well, the first one was Assistant Chief Van Holt. They
Right.
placed him on admin leave. They falsely claimed he engaged in wrongdoing, and $4.2 million shows that the city lied.
When you say they falsely acclaimed, these are other police officers that are writing false reports on, for example, Van Holt.
Yes. Chief Van Holt was accused by the new chief of wrongdoing. He was placed on administrative leave, then he was fired without due process.
Tell us a little story about the car being basically taken from the chief, is that right?
Right.
Because from my understanding, I think you told me they came in the middle of the night, not for the car, but they harassed his family, came to his house. What exactly did they do?
All right. The history, it's a little long, but it
Yeah.
started in 2001. Rick Lopez was being selected as the first ever Latino to be at a rank of chief or deputy chief.
Yes.
He went to a city council meeting. At that council meeting, officers came up to him. They uttered profanities. A lawyer who allegedly represented some of the Caucasian management made derogatory statements on television against Chief Lopez.
Yes.
A few days later, officers went to the home of Lopez late at night, served him with some legal papers in the middle of the night as he was taking his children out of the car, terrorizing him and his family. He withdrew.
He withdrew from being the chief.
From being the deputy chief at that time.
Yeah.
About 9 months later, the city came back to him again, asked him to come.
Yeah.
He said he'll come if Van Holt also comes with him. That's June 2002.
Yes.
They start to make some reforms in the department to clean up the act. People, including council members, start to say derogatory comments about them.
Yeah.
It's a hostile environment. There are written letters like the resistor, which I believe you've seen.
Yes.
The rat posters come up. And then in February of 2003, as they're investigating racial profiling and other harassment, they get placed on admin leave. On admin leave, individuals come to the home of Rick Lopez early morning. This is the second time, and they take his car. And you see the video of the second time.
Yeah. Now, my question is, why isn't something being done against the people who are the organizers of all this, erroneous information?
The law says the city is supposed to do this, but the city council obviously is not following the law. And the chief of police is not following the law, we contend.
Are there any personal lawsuits against some of those police officers?
There
Pending?
have been lawsuits that have named the chief of police, I'm
Yes.
aware of, and I assume there are some lawsuits that have named the city council as well.
Okay. We are going to bring on the set some of the former police officers of Southgate, because I understand the current ones who are on administrative leave cannot, it's against the policy, if they want to get paid and continue to get paid, it's against their policy to come on camera without authorization, and obviously authorization is not going to be granted in this case.
We're sure of that.
Yeah, so we're going to bring on one of the first former officers on the set right now, okay?
Terrific.
Great. I want to welcome our next guest, Troy Hernandez, a former police officer in Southgate, right?
Yes, sir.
I understand you're no longer working there. That's probably one of the reasons why you can talk. What's going on over at Southgate? What happened to you?
Me personally, I was terminated in 2002, and I was perceived to be aligned with Rick Lopez, the only Hispanic chief in Southgate's history. And as of date, it's the lack of leadership and lack of misguidance within the department.
The population in Southgate is, I'm guessing, percentage Hispanic. What is it?
I would say roughly 80 to 90% Hispanic.
80 to 90% population, which is Hispanic. You
Yes.
have a Hispanic chief, right, Brad?
Right, at the time.
It would seem to me that you'd want to have police officers that the people can identify with, right?
Of course, you'd want to have police officers and a police chief that an officer can relate with, someone who is can understand a cultural within the department.
Right. Now, I understand that Brad successfully represented you against the city of Southgate, and they won a nice award for you, which is on appeal right now. When they terminated you, did they make up fictitious, crimes that you had committed
There
or
were
something?
several allegations of misconduct on my part that the city alleged that I had my hand in.
Did you have a hearing before they terminated you?
I did.
And were you represented at the hearing by a union representative or something like
I
that?
was represented by a legal defense fund panel attorney.
And the city wasn't hearing anything, right?
No.
They just said, okay, you're out.
The city's mission was to fire me.
Jeez. And you're successfully working as a police officer right now in another city, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, I'm glad about that. But it's totally amazing, as we talked before the show. I mean, when do you have time to catch criminals and go out and do your job if there's so much infighting within the police force?
You really don't. It's a constant daily basis of looking over your shoulder, especially at Southgate. There are other officers who were targeted as well, and you could really, when you work there, you can tell that they made these officers targets,
Yes.
and to get them out. And so officer safety was jeopardized, and so was the community's public safety was jeopardized.
The officers who made you targets, they're still working at Southgate, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And the city council has done nothing.
They've done nothing. They've failed to act upon it.
A lot of the people that did the harassment have been promoted. So they're
Really?
getting rewarded.
This story is getting more amazing. So they're being promoted. Who's the police chief now?
It's Robert Todd.
And is he a good guy or what?
Robert Todd is the individual that placed Van Holt on administrative leave.
Oh, I see. So we got rewarded for that. Okay. Interesting, interesting.
Robert Todd was the chief that made the decision to terminate me.
I hope you succeed in your appeal, and I respect your courage in coming in here. I appreciate that. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. My second guest on the show, and I'm pleased to have him with Richard Wade. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You were a former sergeant at the Southgate Police Department, correct?
That is correct.
And you, like some of our other guests, were basically ousted and done so in a rather illegitimate way, right?
I believe so, yes.
Tell us your story about what happened with you there at Southgate.
Well, to make a real long story short and cut to the chase, I was involved in the Albert Robles recall and indictment.
Okay.
As a result of that, I was targeted by the current administration for character assassination because I found out they made some backroom deals with Albert during the course of the investigation.
So when you say you were involved in the investigation, what were you doing? Investigating it as a police detective?
No, I was, I'd call it a rogue investigator if you want to call it that.
Okay.
No one was doing anything about what was going on in the city.
Right.
And I took it upon myself, along with 5 colleagues, to mastermind the recall against Albert.
Mm-hmm.
During the course of that recall, I found out that certain administrators in the police department that are still there made backroom deals with Albert.
And what were these backroom deals?
Primarily to make certain individuals the chief, make other individuals captains, increase their salaries, of course, which that's the primary benefit for them to being involved
Sure.
in some backroom deal.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, too, they had no intention of keeping their promises to Albert. Their saying was, make your deals today, worry about payment tomorrow. So
Yes.
there was no intent to fulfill most of the promises. They did fulfill some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they stopped participating in that process, that's when the war, if you want to call it that, started between the PD and Albert Robles.
So what did you do with your information? Who did you bring it to?
I took it to the district attorney's office.
And what was their reaction?
They started the investigation. I
Okay.
actually wore a body wire at one time and recorded Albert in a conversation.
Now, a lot of people might look at you, other officers or, other people saying, what is this guy doing? He's going against one of our own, right?
I was criminalized, if you will. I was, the people that made the deal with Albert suggested that I made a deal. And that kind of blackballed me.
Right.
So the entire department turned against me.
So what did when they turned against you, what did they start doing to basically get you fired?
Well, they'd love to have fired me. They started an internal affairs investigation regarding a couple of allegations that were not true.
Right. They made him up.
Made them up. There's an
Okay.
old saying that if 2 or more people conspire against you, you're pretty much screwed.
Right.
I had an entire police administration and the president and vice president of the POAs conspire against me, so I was pretty much done.
Also, when you're placed in that kind of a situation, if you need backup when you're out in the field,
It's hopeless.
yeah, you're not getting it.
No, you're not getting it. No, you're out
This
there.
almost sounds like a bad movie here.
Absolutely. Those movies come from someplace.
Yeah.
And they come from the reality of law enforcement.
So after an accumulation of, were there complaints against you?
Yes, there was.
The internal affairs, what was their decision? What was their
They
outcome?
wanted to demote me and or fire me.
And what happened at that point in time?
I wouldn't give them the satisfaction, so I was forced into retirement.
So you retired from there?
Yes.
I see. And you're currently working with another police department now?
Yes, I'm a training coordinator for another agency.
Wow, what a nightmare.
It was.
And this has taken place over what period of time?
2001 to 2004.
And you were a police officer for how long?
24 years.
24 years. So this is the result of 24 years of good service, huh?
I didn't even get a retirement party. Yep.
Did you get retirement?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
thank God for that. And you're representing him in a case right now,
Right.
which is against the city of Southgate. And
Right.
that is due to come to trial when?
That's probably 2009. One of the things that happened is his sons are deputy sheriffs, and the allegation is that members of Southgate have taken action against his two sons as well.
How
And that's
is
still
that?
going on now.
How is that? What are they doing?
A captain at Southgate has accessed some people that he knows in the sheriff's department that would be considered cronies,
Yeah.
and they've labeled my sons rats and snitches.
So it's going to be difficult for them to, you know, advance their career.
Absolutely. If they even have a career when it's over with, as a result of what they've done.
Are there lawsuits pending in that situation now?
They have claims as well, and
Really?
their contention is that they have had rat statements just like at Southgate,
Yeah.
and threats made to them just like in the resistor letter at Southgate, with some of the same people involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call me naive, okay? But until I started reading, you know, what was going on, I thought, well, wait a minute, when do you have time to do your job as a police officer if you're fighting with everybody inside, right? I mean, this is outrageous.
It's perception versus reality.
I mean, you seem pretty calm about it. I'd be really pissed off.
It's my reality.
It is.
And,
Yeah.
and the only way to deal with it is, unfortunately, through litigation.
How's the crime situation in Southgate?
I don't like anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's the business. That's what we deal with.
Yeah,
It's
but
the
I mean,
it's
if
the politics
you're
of
so
it.
busy fighting each other, internal fighting, I would figure the crime would be better
The
over
city's
there.
not getting its money's worth. Let's put it that way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, has there been any investigation? This sounds like a major story that should be, you know, on 60 Minutes or something like that. Has there
Should
been
be.
any investigations regarding that?
In February of 2003, Lopez, Van Holt, and Inspector General, they were all investigating a lot of problems. This resistor letter, the racial profiling of
Yeah.
citizens, and this is when individuals were fired or placed on administrative leave so that those investigations stopped.
Wow, I am sorry to hear this news, but I hope you win your case. But hey, after working, it's your reality, but after working 24 years and being a good police officer, you know, you have to walk into this kind of a mess.
I'd like to see reform. I'd like to see change.
Well, I think, you know, with this TV show and the lawsuits that you're pursuing, you will see it.
I hope so.
And I'm glad you took the time to come here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
My next guest is Steve Moomey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You were also a former police officer at Southgate, right?
Yes, I was.
And you were forced to retire, is that it?
No, I retired on a medical.
Okay, but you were a victim of the harassment that went on against some police officers at Southgate, right?
Yes, I got promoted there by Chief Lopez, and I was targeted partly because of that and partly because of other reasons also.
You were promoted by the wrong person, in essence.
Yes, I was told by previous administrations that I would never be promoted there while they were chiefs, and that happened.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the former chiefs actually gave me a book to read. He told me to read it one day because it might become in handy. It was called Success Without Promotion.
Success without promotion?
Yes.
I thought it was going to be called 1984 or something
Well,
like
it's
that.
kind of, it should have been, yes.
Yeah. Now, you were a police officer for how many years?
31 years altogether.
31 years. And this is where you end up, in a situation where people are more concerned with what color of your skin or what nationality you are than going out and fighting crime, right?
Absolutely.
It must be very distressful for you.
Very much so, because I had actually a very good career up to the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And the last 2 years just went downward.
Well, I understand, Brad, you're representing him in a civil suit.
Yes.
My best to you in winning it. I know Brad's won the first two of them, and you would think that the city of Southgate would get it to their head that maybe, you know, they ought to settle some of these other ones, but I'm sorry to hear all of the trouble you had. Keep up the fight, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming in. I'm also pleased to have with us today Art Garcia. Welcome to the show. I understand that you were a police officer in Southgate also,
That's correct.
and currently working at another city.
That's correct.
What happened with you at Southgate?
Well, I was basically forced to resign from Southgate. I was targeted right from early on in my career.
And why is that?
Well, early on in my career, I was never part of the in group there. And especially once I became really good friends with Richard Wade, that's when things got even worse.
Okay,
So
because he was viewed as not being in the in crowd too, right?
That's correct.
You know, and you hear about the buddy system in the police force, right? I mean, everybody's pretty close because you're out there and it's a dangerous environment. How is it that so much internal strife happened when the police officers are supposed to be, you know, together?
Well, I think things got really worse or bad when during the recall, some officers were targeted, and then even after the recall was over, those officers who did not participate in the recall or those who just participated very little, those officers were targeted, they were ostracized and treated, you know, unfairly.
Yeah, and getting another job at another police force, was that difficult?
A little bit, but I mean, I had a pretty clean background, so I didn't really have any problems in it.
So you could go over there and explain what it, and they kind of knew what was going on anyway.
Yes.
Now, you're representing him in a civil suit too? Okay, same situation, right?
Yeah, all these officers, and you can see there's quite a few of them,
Yeah.
were targeted because of their race, their national origin, or their associations.
It's a shame. You know, I feel bad for you because, you know, prior to this show, I've done a lot of civil rights shows where people have been filing suit against the police force because a civilian was injured or whatever, but rarely have I done one where you represent a police force, people doing their job, you know, who are prevented from doing their job simply because based on their race or based on whatever, you know, they're discriminated against.
I have to estimate more than 25% of the officers have or will be making claims of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. It's a major problem. It's something that the city management, the city council needs to do something about, and they're not. And it's just getting worse. It's continuing. The officers, they win their case. They're not allowed to go back to work. It's a horrible situation.
Wow. Would you kindly give out your phone number again, please, and your website?
Sure. It's 818 area code 340-9252.
Right.
340-9252. And the website is goldbergandgage.com, all spelled out GoldbergandGage.com.
Okay, I want to thank both of you for being on the show. Thank you
My
for
pleasure,
appearing
sir.
here. I appreciate it. Good luck to you. And thank you, Brad, and keep up the fight.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. I want to thank you very much for watching our show. You can catch more of these shows at www.insiderexclusive.com. Come back again.